I was just getting the heads up to, yep. So we're good. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the July 12th, 2023 meeting of the Conservation Commission. Before we get started, I wanted to welcome a new member, Adam, to the Conservation Commission. Very happy to have him, and hope you can help us with all our future decision-making up here.
Hope so.
The next order of business is the approval of minutes. Does anybody have edits to make to last month's
I had
meeting
sent
notes?
Kate a couple of
Okay.
changes, so, and the changes had to do with, one on the property at 380 Greenleaf Avenue, just to reference the fact that were also pervious pavers going in. And then on the property that's on, I can't remember the name of it was the second,
Second thing on the agenda.
the second talk session that we had on Prospect Place. I think it was called Prospect. No, what was the name of it?
Pleasant Point?
Pleasant Point. That was the one. Yeah, there were a couple things there. Just the fact that they were 1,000 square feet over, and that the majority of the piece of property was going to be dismantled and rebuilt. And then I thought that Brian had said something about also agreeing about the trees, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
Not recalling, so.
Okay. Any other edits? I'll wait for Stuart to sit down. I'll ask Stuart. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you have any edits on the last month's minutes?
No.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval with the changes.
Seconded?
I'll second that.
Okay. No discussion? All in favor? Actually, I'm not voting because I wasn't here. And you weren't here either, okay. So all in favor? And you're not voting, correct? Yeah,
I never-
we're good, thank you.
Yes, I thought that was
Nope,
the case today.
Stuart showed up, yep. You had it for a second and then.
Sorry.
I'm good anytime.
Okay, so the next order of business is the conditional use permit for 198 Essex Avenue. Is there anyone here to speak to that application? Come on up.
Hello, I'm Rob Westell. I'm the owner of 198 Essex Avenue with my wife, Whitney Westell. We are planning on doing some renovations to the house and then putting on an addition. We are proposing a two-phased addition based on cost and where we're going to end up a year from now, so and what we ultimately want to do for the house. So I just wanted to run through, first I'll run through the existing conditions, and I'll run through what we propose for the addition site work, and then the mitigations that we're proposing to help offset any impact we might have on the wetland boundary. So this is 198 Essex Ave. I'm going to use a pointer. Is that okay? Yeah, no, you can't see it. Can I walk up to the screen? Is that okay?
You can't touch it.
There is
won't
a
touch
pointer
it.
up there.
There's a, yeah, there's
It's
one
it's
pointer.
one that works specifically for that screen, I
Okay,
think.
this one?
Peter can show you.
Probably.
Okay.
It's not the best pointer.
Little button. Not the next button, yeah.
The middle button.
It says hold top button. There it is.
Ah.
All right. So this is our property. It's on Essex Ave. Essex Ave runs north and south approximately. The top of the page is north, bottom of the page is south. This is the west side, this is the east side. The dwelling is approximately wedged up in the north east side of the property. The wetlands the existing wetlands exist along the south border of the property. We have a 100-foot setback for the wetland boundary, which is approximately, would lead us right about here, which goes through the existing dwelling all the way through to Essex Ave. Majority of the property is within the wetland boundary. Wetland,
Buffer?
I guess it would be
Buffer.
the buffer. Is it the wetland buffer? Our vegetated buffer is along the south edge of the property. As I said, the wetland buffer line goes through the existing house. What we're seeing for the existing house is the main dwelling is a little bungalow. That's the main rectangle there. We have a small breezeway, and then we have a garage, existing garage, which is it's a gambrel shape, so it's kind of barn shape. So if you go to the next slide, next page would be. What we're proposing for work on the site is to tear down the existing garage barn and breezeway and construct a 2-story structure, which would be a new garage, master bedroom, and primary bathroom. And then, so that would be phase 1. Phase 2, we would construct basically a bump out of the family room, which would be approximately a 300-foot square foot addition onto that, to the house. As I said before, wetland buffer boundary is here. It cuts partially through that new addition, and for phase 1, and phase 2 would be completely within that wetland buffer area. The existing structure, the south, that would be southwest corner, is approximately 74 feet away from the wetland boundary, or the existing wetland, which is down here. The new phase 2 would bump into that. We'd be about, I think it's 62 feet. So we'd be protruding into that past the existing about 12 feet. The other piece that we'd like to do, which would be impervious surface, is to build some kind of deck on the back of the house, which would be a deck or a patio, but it would be impervious, and there's approximately 500 square feet there. If we go to the next slide. So our planned mitigations are on the property existing. We have quite a bit of the Japanese knotweed, which is about here. Yearly I go through several times this summer and try to yank it all out, but it does grow back. We have a stand of willow trees along this part of the property, and all through those trees there's this honeysuckle vine, which is also an invasive species, which we try to cut and remove yearly, but it grows back. So we're continually maintaining that and trying to fight those invasive species on the property. So that's continuing to do that would be our proposal for mitigations 1. Mitigation 2 would be stabilizing any kind of excavation that we do on the site or ground disturbance with soil runoff mitigation, or basically by providing socks or those tubes that would prevent any soil from running into the rest of the yard and running into the wetland. We would also seed what we could, any ground that was disturbed during the course of construction, so that, again, in any major rain event, we wouldn't have significant runoff into the wetland. Mitigation 3 would be to trying to reestablish this vegetated barrier. The current barrier is here, and it's not the full 25 feet setback, so we would reestablish that full 25-foot setback by basically stop maintaining the lawn and do some plantings along that barrier. And then mitigation 4 would be approximately the delta between roof area, if we did phase 1 and 2 versus what we have today, would be approximately an additional 300 additional gallons in a 1-inch storm. So our plan would be to try to capture that 300 gallons through rain barrels around the house with gutter runoff, controlling it through gutters. Currently, we don't have any gutters on the house, so it just spills off. Excuse me. So those are our proposed mitigations. Any questions that you might have or additional information?
Go ahead, Allison.
I'm not sure if I heard you right. The deck patio area was going to be impervious or pervious?
It would probably be pervious. We haven't planned it out yet, cost-wise. So in this forum, we would go in asking for an impervious surface, and then if the cost lended itself to making it impervious, we would proceed that way. If we do a deck, an open deck, I believe that's still considered impervious. even
Yeah,
though-
you could put
water
crushed stone
does.
underneath it so
Yeah.
that it was
Yep.
absorbent.
And even if we did a patio, it would probably be bluestone with a gap between the pavers so that water could mitigate through.
Yeah, there's more into making a porous surface than just creating a gap between your
Yep.
stones. So you have to look at the drainage profile that they've
Excavation.
developed
Yep.
for creating a pervious patio. Do you have any idea what kind of plants you're going to be putting into that?
So what we had looked into were blueberry bushes and basically stop mowing those areas and letting there are quite a bit of natural ferns and raspberry bushes, that kind of stuff, throughout the area. And in fact, one of the things I've noticed is if I'm able to get the knotweed early, the ferns come in, and that helps prevent the knotweed from coming up. So it would be to encourage that type of growth up until the lawn boundary there.
There aren't going to be any trees or anything removed for this
No,
project?
not within the 50-foot boundary. We do have we have a stand of existing oak trees, which is in the rear of the yard. There are 1 or 2 that overhang the existing garage, so we would probably take those down so they don't fall on the new investment into the property. But those are beyond the 50-foot setback for tree removal.
Okay, so 1 or 2?
2.
And how big are they?
If we go to the photographs, could you scan up? Probably the other way. Yep.
Page 20.
So go down one more. All right, perfect. All right, and can you zoom in?
Sure. I can try.
All right. So this is essentially standing in the back corner of the property, looking
Toward the garage.
towards the back of the garage. The wetland is on the right. There's a small hill. And we have this stand of red oaks that go all the way down the hill. This one, for instance, actually leans out over the existing garage. So that's one that we would have removed. If we're investing X hundred thousands of dollars in an addition, we wouldn't want a tree to fall on top of that. And there are some Norwegian maples here, and there is one oak tree right at the corner here, which is this guy here, which is right on our property line between me and my neighbor. This, as you can imagine, when our oak trees shed acorns, it turns the lawn into ball bearings. It also does a number on our cars as we park close to the garage, so we would probably remove this tree, which is completely outside the wetland buffer zone.
Have you talked to your neighbor about removing that tree?
Yes, and we've talked about, when we had first purchased the house, there was a stand of evergreen trees, white pine trees here that we chipped in together and had removed.
We just hate to see any trees that size come down 6 inches and over. We really like to keep the trees around. The other thing that you have to think about is when you have a cluster of trees like the oaks that are growing in the back, the root systems are mingled. And if you take one out, it's a potential to disturb the other trees, just to let you know.
Yep. No, we love our yard. It's, if you go to the next picture up, I believe there's one in the backyard. Looking back at the house, or one more. This one. All right. This is basically the condition of our yard, which is, we love the property. This is why we want to continue to invest in the property and stay there and do what we need to do to stay at that location. It's very park-like. We have very mature trees. The lawn has long been established. It's not perfect, but we like it. We do have the wetland, which offers, when you sit on this back porch, it's like sitting in a bird sanctuary. So we wouldn't do anything intentionally that would hamper what we have there today and the value of that property. Part of the value of that property is the condition, is the mature trees.
Have you considered planting one or several trees to mitigate for the fact that you're taking down two, probably
Outside the wetland boundary?
outside or inside? Those
Yeah, we would.
100-year-old trees.
Definitely. If you go to the next photo where we show the front Essex Ave elevation. So down a little, right there. All right. So we have two maple trees. This is one here, and this is the other one, which they're struggling right now. We've talked to an arborist, and he didn't think that there was much we could do to save them. But yes, when those are a valuable part of the shading of the house and the aesthetic of the property, when those died and we would have to take them down, we would replace them. We could do an ornamental tree here at the corner of the house. But again, it is outside the wetland buffer and the 50-foot setback for tree removal.
I had some questions about your stormwater
Yep.
coming off your roof. So you had proposed gutters, and then I think you said a total of 6 rain barrels to try to capture
Yep.
that, I guess, delta between what is coming off the roof now and what will be coming off the roof. What is the overflow going to look like for those rain barrels? Like, once they've filled up, where's that water going?
So the plan would be so that this roof sheds to the east, this one sheds to the west. This would have a continuous wrap on it. I would imagine that we would have a rain barrel at this corner, which could shed into the side here where we have plantings. We would have a rain barrel up on this side, which would also shed into the plantings. We would have to think about how we would collect the water. Maybe there's a barrel here and a barrel up against the house here to collect this roof runoff. And those would also run out into the yard.
I think those are, I mean, just based on June, like, have the potential to fill up pretty quick. And
Yeah.
then you still want to give that water that's no longer going into the rain barrels because they're full an opportunity to infiltrate. And so, running off across lawn is probably not the best. If it was going into planting beds like you were talking about is better, or like a dry well for some of them.
Yep.
I don't know. I think because you're having 6, it might be different methods for each one of them, likely, based on where they're located in terms of how to infiltrate that water. Do you have anything to add to that, Barbara? Because you have rain barrels at your house in terms of like good infiltration methods
Well,
or
like-
overflow?
Like, yeah, I mean, an infiltration ditch or, you know, something like that. or
Yeah,
An area that'll catch it and keep
that would catch
there.
it. Yeah, the same as if you had a downspout, you would have something that, so it just wouldn't run out into the lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be good to know where they are gonna be too.
Yeah, and
We don't know.
what I would propose would be one at the corner here, one against the house. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then this guy would dump out onto this roof. So maybe we do 2 at the corner. If we got a total of 6, if we had a 50-gallon rain barrel, I know they make them in various sizes, but 50 gallons seems to be the most standard size.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they'll overflow in one quick storm,
Yeah.
especially if you have that many spread out on the property,
Yep.
on the house. They're gonna fill right up.
And then I guess your plan would be to use that water.
Yeah, so we do have plantings around the house currently that we have hydrangea along the front of the house here that we would use that rainwater to help water. We have plantings or landscaping around the edge of the house here, this new addition for the phase 2, and then the remainder of this would be, right now, this whole back corner, because of the shade, is all moss. So these would probably run off with, so that we get enough drainage so that we don't back up against the house.
Any other questions?
I've got a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Adam.
For the vegetative buffer that you're talking about replanting, you show that it kind of cuts over that existing playground. Is that being removed? And
So the playground is probably at the end of its use for us. We have a 12 and a 10-year-old. So, and it came third hand, so it's reaching the end of its life. So that would be removed.
and then the shed there is within that 25-foot
Yep.
zone as well. Are you planning on doing anything with that, or is that?
We came to the planning board in 2018 and got permission to place it there.
Okay. And then lastly, I have just one question on the deck patio area.
Yep.
And, you know, it may not matter so much, but, you know, in terms of the size of that, you know, if it could be smaller, obviously that's less surface to catch rainwater. I'm not sure what the use, you know, case is for it that you intend, but
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure what the use case, like, you know, there's not, it's a kind of slightly strange shaped deck patio.
It is.
For like putting a
It's-
dining room table out there or a grill or something like
Correct,
that.
and that was the goal. So right now, our kitchen is located here, so we're maintaining the
Yep.
window at the kitchen. We'd be able to exit the new family room space on the side here. We'd probably have a small table and a grill and some plantings up there. It's really just a place to, if it were elevated, that's probably the plan. If it were lower, we would have more square footage to
Yep.
spread out. But again, we have to think of a strategy for the stairs. Again, what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get some boundary limits so that we can move forward and get pricing and proceed.
Yep. That's it.
I think on the plans you show an outdoor shower.
It's a wash station. The kids like to go to the beach and they rinse their feet off.
And is that gonna drain back into the system in the house?
Right now, it's honestly, it's a hose, so it just drains on the side of the house.
So I don't know what the regulations are in Portsmouth for that. but
For a
I
rinse
think-
station,
For, well, I don't know. It's,
I think it's called a rinse station, and they are permitted. When
It
you
loo-
when
it
you go
looks-
to shower, then you need a drain.
so it's not a shower.
They rinse their feet off.
So if it doesn't go back into the house,
Correct.
what's underneath and what are you doing for that?
Currently, there's built up pea stone underneath it.
Okay, so you already have it in there.
There is a rinse station that's currently on the back of the house here. Yeah.
I think is the plan calling it a shower? I think that should just be clarified on your plan.
Okay.
Because going forward, I'm sure that probably has, as you've probably looked up, different requirements as opposed to a rinse station.
Yep.
Because I think if it was an outdoor shower, we'd have a little bit more concern about it, just in terms of how it's
Big gray
plumbed. I'm
water
assuming it would
versus-
be
yep.
plumbed into the house, in which case,
Yep.
Fine. I had one question to piggyback on Adam's about the deck. Just in terms of the size, it looks like you have, that's a good picture, stairs wrapping all the way around.
Yes, those are included in the square footage.
So, I mean, one way to shrink your square footage would be just to have stairs in one location, then you lose some of that
Yep.
area.
So again, what I'm trying to do is establish a baseline, and then
Yep.
we will design it and fit it into that
Yep.
that square footage, or even reduce it. When I came to get the shed proposal, I had actually gotten a shed proposal approval for a 12 by 18 shed, and the actual shed's 10 by 14.
Yeah.
So it's really driven by what we can afford.
Limits, yeah. Totally. Okay.
It's that this is wishful thinking, and then reality is going to set in, and we're gonna tighten our belt.
Yeah.
But I want to know.
What you have
They-
to work with.
Yep. So start with a baseline, and then we'll work with that.
Yeah, Lynn.
It's just to clarify what you're asking from us right now. There's like a phase 1 and a phase 2 here. Are you asking for permission for both of those
We're asking for
phases?
permission for both of them. Phase 1, because we are not extending the heated square footage footprint by more than 25%, we don't need a conditional use permit for it, and we're not extending towards the wetland, so that would be the garage section and the primary bedroom above. You can see that the wetland boundary just barely it does cut right through there. If we were to continue with phase 2, we definitely need it. Again, what drives phase 2 is how much is it all going to cost. We have an idea, but we're working things out. So ideally, if we're going to have a 4-bedroom house, we would like to have a little bit larger living space down on the first floor. So that's our opportunity with the current footprint of the house, and where we can expand and set things out.
So asking for all of it right now. And the one question I had about just the layout, opportunities to do the living room expansion like on the front side of the house so that it's
Yeah, if we go
further-
to the floor plan, maybe 2 up or so, maybe 1 down. 2 down.
Is this good?
You go down to the 1 more. Oh, I'm sorry, go up. 1 more. 1 more. All right. This is existing floor plan. Existing floor plan has a kitchen in the back corner. We have a long, narrow living room here, and then a dining room there. On the front of the house, we have
Sorry.
we have a small porch, and then basically this was imagine at one time it was a 3-season porch that they turned into a living space. So for the outline of the existing home, how do we make that work? Excuse me. How do we make that work with the existing layout, maintain some of the circulation paths that we have currently, and not ripping out the new kitchen that we built 5-6 years ago? So taking this room and basically expanding it out seems to be the best path for the outline of the floor plan. This is currently, it's a 3-season porch in the back of the house. During COVID, I had the opportunity to have my office out there. It's a wonderful space. It's a great opportunity if you're inside the home to think about how do we access some of that great side and backyard space, and by extending out into the living space more into it, that's the place where you want to be in the house.
Okay. So no, you basically don't see any opportunities on the front part of the house?
Not on the front, again, setbacks for the front of the house, 35 feet, essentially there, and side yard, we have a 10-foot setback. The current garage, the existing garage protrudes on the north property line or into the 10-foot setback by approximately 6 to 8 inches. As part of this Phase 1 garage addition, we're actually pulling that back within the 10-foot setback.
Yeah,
So the house is really pushed up into that corner,
Right.
and the natural place to expand with limited impact on the site, we talked about the trees, is really that corner of the house, that back corner.
I mean, I think just to say it, I think you could make the case, right, for compromising the setback in the front in order to protect the buffer in the back. I mean, they're both going to be conditional use situations, so.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that it sounds like, have considered all the alternatives.
Yeah, I started drawing this when we bought the house in
Right.
2010, so, or 2009. So my wife's ready for us to do this, so we're pushing forward. Stop designing, start to build.
Peter, I have a question for you. So these are not the final plans, because you're saying you're kind of just wanting to see what the limits are, money-wise, what can you actually do? I mean, at what point, if we approve this and there's changes, like what types of changes made to the plan will they have to come back to us for approval?
I would hope that we would.
Sorry, that was for Peter back there first, and then you can respond.
Peter Britz, Director of Planning and Sustainability. Kate probably could answer the question, but I'll give it a shot. So if it's before you and you approve it, then it's approved. And I don't think there's any way to not approve the whole plan at this point, because that's what's before you. So if you want to apply for a phased approach that's phased time-wise, then you'd have to do two separate plans. We don't really do a phased approach approval. It's either all approved or comes back for a separate plan or something. So,
But for example, like the deck on the plan is a certain size. If it becomes a different size,
if it's smaller, that's okay.
okay. So
Yep.
anything
Yep.
bigger or changes closer to the wetland, they would have to come back
Right.
to us for? Okay.
Right. Yep. So I think the way he did it, he just assumed the largest one he'd
Okay.
possibly want, and hopefully it'll shrink or
Any changes that stay within that
has
footprint
to stay within that footprint.
are okay
And it has
don't
to
have
be,
come back.
I think the other key is it's pervious or impervious.
Yep.
So clarify that.
Okay. Thanks, Peter.
Oh, Peter, while we still have you kind of close to the mic, just for clarification on the 25% exemption. So I think with that has to come separately from what's before us today, so as a separate land use application?
Right. Everything in the application, that 25% only applies if you're looking for an exemption on your project. So that, while it would meet that in that garage, the phase 1 area he's describing, he's not applying for that. He's applying for the entire application for all of it. So everything's under one conditional use permit application, not really looking for an exemption at this point. It doesn't sound like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions?
yeah. So just curious on the lighting too, the outdoor lighting that you'll have. I didn't see it on the plan, but do you know?
So existing, we have, and which we would probably maintain, we have a light on the garage in the back, which provides light for this section of the backyard. We have lights on the garage here, which provide light for the driveway in this area of the yard. And then we have porch lights. We wouldn't extend any additional, there's no reason to extend any additional lighting into this area of the yard.
So to clarify, no lighting on the deck or the patio?
Well, the lighting on the deck and the patio would probably come from in the same location that we have it today, and it provides, there are 2 frog eyes or spotlights up on the corner of the garage, and it provides a light basically in this area of the backyard. And the actual lit footprint, or the actual light that's touching the ground is closer to the house, so it would be controlled to this back corner. and not shining out into the rest of the yard.
And so sort of unrelated to that, but for the plantings that you're going to do in that extended buffer that you're doing,
Yep.
you say you'll either let the grass grow up or you're going to plant things?
Both. So when I looked at the, I don't have the name of it, but there was a New Hampshire wetland buffer guide that on the internet that basically called out the 3 different types of mitigations in a vegetated area. One is you go and you buy plants and you landscape it. The other extreme of the pendulum is that you just let it go, and then there's a medium mitigation strategy where you plant some and you also let it grow in. So that would be our plan.
Plant and let it grow and not mow that area
Correct.
at all and not have it be like a
Yep.
garden per se, more like a wild area.
Or like a wild area, yeah. We have a lot, we currently have a lot of lawn, so we, letting some of that, oh, sorry. Did I do that? I think I did that.
I think so.
No idea.
Is there a back button, maybe?
Go back.
Hold on.
Kevin to the
We've got, we've got,
Sure. Oh, thanks. Yeah. So again, we have quite an extensive lawn area. The lawn has been established for a very long time. Pulling the existing buffer out 5 to 10 feet beyond where it is today it makes sense to help control runoff, and it doesn't have any impact on the aesthetic or anything else. It just brings that wildlands or wetland offset vegetated barrier a little bit further into the yard, which is fine.
And then just to follow up on that, I don't know if Peter told you, but in the recommendation, he did say that we have these markers that we require that you put up for the wetland buffer.
Okay.
And along with that, I'm wondering how, if you have like something written up on a maintenance plan on how not to go in there and cut, and other than the invasive species. that you're talking about.
Other than what the guidance is, it says we're not allowed to cut anything. There's different sizes. I could provide a write-up to Kate on that.
Yeah, that would be great, because a lot of people, they let it grow up, and
Yep.
then a few
You go
years
in there,
later,
brush hog, and knock
right, they
it all
sell
down.
it, or,
If I do that, then I'll deny it.
yeah.
So I'm hesitant to do too much pruning and gardening. At one time, it appears it was landscape. There's some rock walls and that sort of thing in there, low lying. We have a hydrangea in there and a burning bush, which aren't naturally growing. I imagine somebody had a nice garden in there at one time. So those are still there, remnants of what was there before, but we wouldn't go and landscape that.
and I don't want to start a whole big thing about it, but you might want to get that burning bush out of there.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it invasive?
It's invasive, and it will totally take over on the ground.
We
It
have-
will
we have-
seed.
We have two. We have one is here, and then the other one is there. I'd imagine that they were planted as part of a landscape plan of whoever. They look like they were planted intentionally.
Yeah, you'll start seeing them pop up everywhere.
Okay.
So,
Those placards too, you can purchase from the city.
Okay.
You don't have to go try to find some.
Landscaper marked trees with the orange tags for the actual wetland barrier, or the actual wetland. And then these signs that you're proposing would they go on the 100-foot setback or at the?
I think where your vegetated buffer is.
Okay.
I think marking that
Yeah.
and beyond.
And
Yep.
they're
would be
just
a
little,
no-cut
like,
area.
metal circle.
They're like little placard things that get stuck in the grass.
Do they stick in the ground?
No.
Like 4 inches in diameter, but you can just nail them to either
stake or
a tree
something.
or
A
a
tree.
stake that you put
Okay.
in the ground. Yeah, they're pretty small, but
Okay.
still noticeable.
Do we have any more questions, or are we ready for a motion?
I have one more question. So I've been staring at this site plan B, the one that's color coded.
Yep.
And I'm just having trouble understanding what the different colors represent. There's kind of a
So,
yellow
yep.
blob, and of course your
The
wetland is a very
blobs.
unusual shape.
Let's talk about the blobs.
What is the yellow?
So the yellow is the Japanese knotweed. So this is pretty much the extent of where that I don't know what you'd call it. They talk about roots that are intertwined. This is where they are, and this is the area that I'm constantly pruning and trying to control. Right by the end of summer, I have them knocked back to about here, and then somehow spring they're sprouting out everywhere. So the yellow is the existing Japanese knotweed, and then the orange here is the extent of that honeysuckle vine system, which is all up in these willow trees. It's hard to mitigate, but I do my best because the backside of that is, of course, wetland, water wetland, and I don't have access to it. So I knock it back, and then spring it all comes back. I talked to an arborist, and he said you could invest a lot of money in it and not really get any further than what you're getting. And he suggested that the willow trees are pretty close to the end of their life expectancy. So probably within the next 10 years or so, those will probably give up.
Yeah. So you could kind of proactively put some new woody little trees in there, I suppose.
Yeah,
if you're,
and start to
you're
plant.
really
Yep, and
concerned
there
about
is
that.
other growth going in there, and it's really controlling those vines from overcoming that some of those new growth.
Yeah.
Not new growth.
Yeah, both of those plants are really tricky. So are you proposing anything for the Japanese knotweed beyond what you typically do?
What I do is I get out there in spring and I yank it out of the ground, and then probably halfway through the summer I do it again, and then at the end of the year, at the end of the summer into fall, when we get in the leaf season, I'll try to yank it up again. So I've been doing that for the last 4 to 5 years, and from what I've read, without going in there and like covering it with plastic or going in there with some kind of nasty chemical, which I don't want to do right on the wetland, there's really, you just have to be diligent about yanking it up.
Yeah. And even just like yanking out the roots,
Yeah,
right? That is a
getting it down
disturbance.
low.
That's going to, facilitate more
Yep.
erosion. So just to be cautious of that.
We have a lot of leaf cover because of our oak trees, so.
Right. Well, and planting some like little woody shrubs and things back there too
Yeah.
could also help provide a little bit of competition potentially. But
Yeah, and
thanks for-
I've noticed that, again, as I said before, as soon as I was able to get some of the knotweed up, those ferns pop right up, and they block the sun, and that helps mitigate the knotweed.
Yeah, and even some bigger things too.
Yep.
Some blueberries or whatever you might put back.
Yeah, and that would be the goal, would be to get
Yeah.
some raspberry, blueberry bushes intertwined in the reclaimed areas.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
When do you think you want to do this?
So we're talking to contractors, and as you probably know, the timeline for housework is put out quite a long time. So we're hoping to start it in the fall if we can find someone that's available to do that, and that's also pending the building permit process that we would need to go through. But in all reality, because we are doing the demo of the garage and we plan on staying in the house during the work, it would probably be more late winter, early spring.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
It'd be kind of weird. Would you? You've done a lot of work, and it's great that you're, what you've researched and figured out and all that. And there still seems to be, as Samantha indicated, a fair amount of questions or not certainty in some of this. And I don't know if there's a possibility at all of considering this a work session at all. Just planting the seed, because once we start discussing, we don't usually discuss with the applicant, so I'm asking that question now.
What's the question? I'm sorry.
Whether or not you would consider this a work session at all?
No, we're going for the application for the
Okay.
continuous use.
That helps, thanks.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion? Go ahead, Allison.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of this application to the planning board with the following stipulation. Any trees removed would be replaced with similar type and number of trees. Any patio or deck area installed should be pervious. The installation of the buffer markers across that 25-foot section, report on planting success demonstrating an 80% survival rate at 1 year. You come back and report to the Sustainability and Planning Office. Additional method of infiltration by the rain barrels for overflow. Any increase in impervious surface will require a new CUP.
I'll second that. What was the one before the last one?
Additional method of infiltration by the rain barrels for overflow.
I think I'd like to add one more, which is dark sky lighting. So whatever lighting you currently have, try to have it downward
Yeah, we
pointing
have modern
and
lights that have
timers.
Yep, and they have hoods over them, which
Yep,
prevent the
perfect.
upward light. Yep.
Okay.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Find out what you guys think of this. So in addition to that, which are all great, I had them all written down, is to include in the plans where the barrels will go and to include a cross-section of, if you are not going to use a deck and you're going to do a patio, that a cross-section of that patio and how it's installed. I think we definitely need to have these details because you have not picked out the contractor yet. So I think those should be shown to the planning board also. And where you say 5 to 10 feet, extending that buffer, I wanted to put in the stipulation that it's 10 feet and that it's written in the plans.
Is it not to the extent that we're required to do it for 25 feet past the wetland?
He's talking about the 25-foot vegetated buffer, that they should go to that extent. I agree with that.
Which I think in some places probably 5, in some places is 10 to
Yeah.
get there.
So draw it out for.
Yep, on that plan, it is representative. That's what you're seeing in blue. Oops, sorry, wrong pointer.
And
So what you're seeing in blue here is the reclaimed lawn area.
okay.
And in the write-up, I propose what that square footage, I think it's over 2,000 square feet of additional vegetated barrier.
I don't know if you guys are okay with adding that?
Yeah.
Jess?
Yep. Yeah. Any other stipulations people want to add? Okay, so discussion.
Well, I appreciate the fact that the applicant's trying to stay on top of the bittersweet and the knotweed. I think that's very admirable. And I also understand the position where, you know, you get into it with a quote which may not be fixed and maybe you can't afford everything that you're looking at. So I understand some of the uncertainty as well.
I also appreciate the voluntarily bringing back the vegetated buffer to 25 feet and having it not be manicured is really appreciated. And I think the stipulations that we have, I hope allow you to proceed with your project with enough, you know, wiggle room to get what you're after in the end. Okay, are we ready for a vote? All in favor? Okay. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda, I think it's just other business. Let's see here. Which, what do we have here? Joint work session scheduling, is that with the planning board? Right, so we're trying to come up with dates for that, but nothing's set in stone on that yet, right?
Not yet. So it sounds like the staff liaison to the planning board will be meeting with the chair of the planning board early next week to figure out different dates, and then we'll send out a poll probably for a bunch of different dates in mid to late August and then September for going over the land use or the zoning ordinance changes. And we're looking at probably similar dates to what we do, so Wednesday afternoons, but also nighttime times that will work for planning board, which they do Thursday nights. So there will be a big mix to choose from, but that'll go out probably in the next 2 weeks.
And then I think we might restart the subcommittee for looking at the conserving of properties, since our original list hasn't really panned out. So I think we're gonna, get back into that and, see what else is out there or what we can salvage of some of those properties that we were looking at originally. So at some point, we'll get a date set up for that. I got an email from Ted, who is through, Non-Toxic Portsmouth and Non-Toxic Dover have set up the accreditation, NOFA accreditation class, and they're doing it at the Portsmouth Historical Society, October 30th through November 2nd, and that's happening. And I guess at one point, the Conservation Commission had said we would be a non-paying sponsor of the program, and he just wanted to make sure that that was still okay with us, which I am.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll respond back to him on that. That's all I had on the other business. Did you have anything else, Kate?
Yeah, so just quickly on a little update on the climate action plan. So I left some flyers for the upcoming workshop. This will be our second workshop for the climate action plan that the consultant is leading. And it'll be end of July, so July 31st in the Levinson Room at the library. And the focus, we're still going to meet with the consultants tomorrow to sort of go over the agenda and exactly what we'll be talking about. But the focus will be on they're going to outline the feedback that they got from the first meeting and all the outreach that the climate ambassadors have been doing. So what our prioritized strategies have been for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we're going to talk a little bit about the 2021 greenhouse gas inventory, and we're going to sort of do more breakout rooms and breakout sessions with groups that show up on still what they want to see done and what they would like to see prioritized. So we'll have more information on that soon, but this is just the basic meeting info, and hopefully we can help post these around town and tell your friends and tell different groups that you know. Yeah.
Kate, so will there be a summary of the information that we've collected so far?
Yes. So they're going to do, as part of their presentation before we get into the breakout groups, I believe they'll be going over what sort of feedback they got from everybody and how that turned into a list of prioritized strategies that they came up with along with help from the feedback. So it should be still more back and forth, so it won't be a finalized list,
Right.
but it'll be representative of what we got from feedback. And then, so that is July 31st. I don't know if Jess wanted to talk about the next community conversation, if
Sure.
that's set in stone. Not to throw you on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's official. So the next community conversation, which is being organized by Portsmouth Climate Action and Portsmouth Smart Growth, will be the Monday prior to that. So Monday, July 24th at 6:30 in the Levinson Room. The goal of these conversations, again, is just to facilitate a conversation about climate change and specific topics sort of based around the climate action plan so that we can offer additional feedback to the consultant. So the topic this week or this month will be around waste, and specifically plastic and recycling and composting. So spread the word. Anybody who wants to come.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it for me.
The letter?
Oh, do we want to?
Just mention it? Yeah, I guess. Just to let everyone-
Sure. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So, Peter actually received a call from a neighbor living over in Courier's Cove down off of Little Harbor Road, mentioning that they saw another neighbor using pesticides or herbicides within the buffer. So we went ahead and drafted a letter, just sort of an enforcement letter to the whole neighborhood, but also an educational awareness letter saying sort of that they were in the wetland buffer. And we gave them some info on what's in the ordinance around pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, and gave them recommendations and links to the NOFA standards and the different sustainable land care pages that we've done on the website. So we have that all drafted up, and we're going to include the wetland buffer graphic that we also have online just to help people visualize in case they aren't aware that they're in the buffer down there, because it's both a freshwater wetland down there and also the tidal buffers there. So that's something we went over today in our pre-meeting with Barbara and Sam, just to sort of make you all aware that we're going to send out a little light enforcement.
And then eventually it'll be a letter that'll go out to everybody, that, like, we'll
Right.
run it by everybody here, but it'll
Yeah,
go
so
to the whole.
Do we have any kind of teeth? We don't, do we? I mean, it's just like, hey, please don't do that.
Well, we were talking like you kind of have to catch them in the act, like doing it, and how does one
I think this will,
surveillance out there?
this will be helpful, but I think Sam's right. Having like surveillance or being able to catch them in the act, then we can, send a zoning enforcement officer out or send a letter, an official letter saying they need to cease using pesticides or herbicides or else they'll be fined or something like that. But in this case, it's sort of just a warning to the whole neighborhood in case they don't know, because there might be new neighbors in that neighborhood that we don't know about. But back to what Barbara mentioned about, so as we know, the wetland buffers and the wetland delineation is being updated right now. And when we have that update, we plan to do mailings to everyone that is in the buffer, because it'll be updated and there might be new people or people might have grown away from the buffer. And along with that, we're thinking that we should also include sort of an educational campaign around what is and isn't allowed in the buffer. We can use our sustainable land care flyers and information that we've already sort of made this year, but we're just trying to think of other things that we can include in that mailing once we have all the abutters listed out in the fall.
Yeah, I neglected to mention, and I had thought of it earlier, just to reinforce the fact that there were no herbicides and et cetera to be used in the buffer, but I forgot for this gentleman that was here.
We also talked about in the pre-meeting for this Courier's Cove incident, whether or not it was a professional company coming and doing the spraying or whatever was happening, and how do we, it's kind of like, if it's a contractor, usually we're like, well, you should know you shouldn't be doing that, and so it's an education piece too for these spraying companies that, like, if your client is in the 100-foot buffer, like, you can't be doing this. So we don't really know exactly how to get to that at the moment, but something to think about.
It's a good question about the teeth, though, because, I mean, I know other communities sort of do have a process written in, like you say, if you actually document that they're doing something, then there's a process where they will receive a warning, then they'll receive a fine, and the same for companies that do it.
Yeah.
So it would be kind of nice to explore that.
Well, is that something that we should have in Ordinance 10?
We should check into it for sure. Can we do that?
Is that where it would go? I mean,
not
I
sure.
don't know.
I mean, we already sort of have a zoning officer that does enforcement for the whole ordinance. I'm not sure if that's something we would need specifically for Article 10, if we already have someone that would go out and enforce the whole
Okay.
article.
We would definitely need, though, a process to be written out,
Right, maybe something more aggressive than what we have right now,
which is nothing.
which is none, which is, if you see it, say it, but, yeah.
I mean, it's the same problem with the state, too. I mean, they have
You need proof.
their regulations for the shoreland, and it's just sort of, it's in there. Neighbors can complain, but that's about it.
Anything else?
You want to speak?
Do you have anything? Sorry, I'm looking at you, the member of the public. Did you have?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very briefly, my name is Jake Marvelli. I'm a lawyer at Hopeful Phoenix, Gormley and Roberts down the street. I represent a company called Port City Air Leasing, which had some time ago presented to you concerns concerning an application by a company called Pease Aviation Partners to do some work out at Pease. This group had voted unanimously against recommending that DES approve the wetlands permit that that company was seeking. Since then, that matter has gone to the New Hampshire Wetlands Council, and it's gone on to the New Hampshire Supreme Court with an issue on standing. I've submitted public comment electronically. I think Mr. Britt, I've given him written or printed out versions. I don't know if he's handed those out yet, but he has those for you to apprise you on it. It felt important to keep you up to date on that that issue because it's an issue that you did vote on originally, and that by statute you've had a special ability to weigh in on that wetlands permit issue. So forgive the length of the packet. I did print it on double sides to save paper, but that gives you an update on where the matter is. And should the commission have any questions in the future, I'd be happy to come back and answer those in writing or verbally. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. Ready to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn in record time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.